May 1st, 1866, 6 o'clock in the evening, South Memphis, Tennessee. Sergeant Marcus Taylor, 28 years old, stands in front of Avery Chapel Baptist Church, adjusting his Union Army uniform. The blue wool jacket still smells like gunpowder from 3 years of service with the 3rd United States Colored Heavy Artillery. He fought to end slavery. He defended Fort Pickering. He earned his freedom with blood. Now he's home ready to pray with his brothers, ready to thank God for deliverance. 50 other black veterans stand with him on that church porch. They survived the Civil War. They're wearing their uniforms with pride because they're soldiers of the United States Army. They're Americans, heroes. But as the church bell rings and they bow their heads to pray, something moves in the darkness beyond the street. Torches, 60 of them, maybe more. The flames cut through the twilight like demon eyes, moving closer, carried by white men singing songs of hatred. Marcus hears it first. The words cut through the evening air like knives. Nigger soldiers think they own this town. The mob is coming. Police officers from Memphis, firefighters, shopkeepers, dock workers, all white, all armed, all filled with rage that black men dare to wear the uniform of freedom. Marcus looks through the church window and counts the guns. Rifles, pistols, axes, cans of kerosene splashing in the torchlight. This isn't a protest, this is an execution. Inside the church, Reverend Ewing stands up. His voice is steady, but his hands shake. Brothers, we fought for freedom. Tonight we pray for deliverance. The words barely leave his mouth before the first gunshot shatters the stained glass window. Screams, chaos, broken glass raining down on the wooden pews like bloody hail. What happened in the next 48 hours would become America's first post-Civil War massacre. 46 black veterans and civilians murdered. 4 churches burned to ash. 12 schools destroyed. 91 homes turned to rubble. 5 black women raped by white mobs while police watched. An entire community erased from existence in 3 days. 3 days of hell that every history book you ever read called a riot. But riots have 2 sides fighting. This was extermination. This was ethnic cleansing on American soil. This was terrorism with a badge and a torch. And for 155 years, they lied about why it happened. They lied about who started it. They lied about the victims. They erased the names. They rewrote the story. They made sure your grandmother never learned it in school. They made sure you never knew that your ancestors were slaughtered in churches for the crime of wearing a uniform, for the crime of being free, for the crime of coming home. But today, that lie dies. Today you learn the truth about Memphis 1866. And after this, you'll never see police brutality the same way again. You'll never hear Blue Lives Matter without remembering that those blue uniforms hunted your great-great-grandparents like animals. You'll understand why the wealth gap exists, why black families rent instead of own, why your inheritance was stolen before you were born. Because Memphis 1866 wasn't ancient history, it was the blueprint, the template, the system testing how much they could destroy and get away with. And they got away with everything. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what happened in those 3 days. You'll learn the names they erased, the faces they buried, the testimonies they ignored. You'll discover why Union veterans men who fought to end slavery were hunted down in their own churches just 1 year after the Civil War ended. You'll see how Memphis police firefighters and judges orchestrated a 3-day extermination campaign while the United States Army stood by and watched. You'll read the survivor testimonies that Congress heard, but nobody was ever prosecuted for. And you'll connect the dots from Memphis 1866 to George Floyd 2020. Same system, same script, same murderers in uniform. This isn't ancient history. If your grandparents or great-great-grandparents lived anywhere in Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, or Alabama in the 1860s, this affected your family. This is your stolen inheritance. $100,000 in 1866, money equivalent to $2 million today, stolen from one community in 3 days. Multiply that by dozens of massacres across the South: Tulsa, Rosewood, Wilmington, Elaine. That's trillions of dollars stolen from Black Americans. Your poverty isn't your fault. It was stolen. Your struggles aren't because your ancestors didn't work hard enough. They worked harder than anyone. They built empires from nothing. And white supremacy burned every single one to the ground. After this video, you'll understand why Black veterans still face police brutality today. Because it's the same system that killed them in 1866. You'll never hear the phrase law and order the same way. Because in 1866, law and order meant white police leading lynch mobs into Black churches. It meant firefighters refusing to put out flames while Black children burned alive. It meant judges charging Black survivors with rioting while white murderers walked free. That system never died. It just changed its language, rebranded. But the violence still there, the theft ongoing, the cover-up perfected over a century and a half. You carry this legacy in your DNA. Your survival is a miracle. The fact that you're here watching this video right now means your bloodline survived genocide. Let me show you why. Let me show you who they were. Let me speak the names they tried to erase forever. The 3rd United States Colored Heavy Artillery. Say that name out loud. The 3rd USCHA. Over 1,200 Black soldiers, formerly enslaved men who joined the Union Army in June 1863 to fight for freedom. They weren't given freedom. They took it. They earned it with service, with blood, with 3 years of defending Memphis at Fort Pickering, while the Confederacy tried to take the city back. These men loaded cannons. They built fortifications. They stood guard through hot Tennessee summers and freezing winters. They did everything white soldiers did, but they did it for less pay, with worse equipment, and with the knowledge that if the Confederacy captured them, they wouldn't be treated as prisoners of war. They'd be executed on sight or sold back into slavery, but they served anyway. They fought anyway. And on April 30th, 1866, the 3rd United States Colored Heavy Artillery was honorably discharged. 1,200 Black men walked out of Fort Pickering as veterans, as heroes, as free men with back pay in their pockets and hope in their hearts. They were going home, going to build lives, going to marry, buy land, start businesses, raise children in freedom. For the first time in their lives, they owned their future. Let me tell you who some of these men were. Sergeant Marcus Taylor. I'm using him as a representative figure because the Army didn't preserve many individual records, but his story represents hundreds of real men. 28 years old, a carpenter, married to Rachel Taylor just 2 months before his discharge. He bought a small house in South Memphis with his savings, became a deacon at Avery Chapel Baptist Church. He was building something, building a life, building a legacy. Frances Thompson. Not a soldier, but a survivor you need to know. A Black woman, a seamstress living in South Memphis. She owned her home, worked hard, saved money, went to church every Sunday. Her story is going to break your heart, but you need to hear it. Because what happened to Frances Thompson is what happened to thousands of Black women whose names we'll never know. Lucy Smith, another survivor, a wife, a mother. She watched her husband murdered in front of her, watched white men burn her house while she stood in the streets screaming. She testified before Congress later, spoke the names of the men who killed her husband, named them, but they were never arrested, never charged, never punished. Jackson Godell, a very quiet, sensible man. That's how witnesses described him. He wasn't a soldier, he was just a man trying to live. On May 1st, 1866, he stopped at John Muller's grocery store on his way home from work to buy cornmeal. Cornmeal, food for his family. 3 white men followed him into that store with revolvers. They knocked him on the head, knocked him to the ground, fired 2 shots into his back, left him bleeding to death in the gutter outside. John Muller, the white grocer, witnessed the whole thing, testified to Congress, said Jackson was unarmed, said Jackson did nothing, said the men murdered him for no reason except the color of his skin. Nobody was arrested. Nat Wardland, an elderly black man, not a soldier, not a threat, just old, just trying to survive. On May 2nd, Memphis police officers Egan and Clark kicked down his door looking for Molly Davis. "We're looking for Molly," they said. "If we find her, we'll kill her." Nat told them she wasn't there. They didn't believe him. They torched his house anyway, burned everything he owned. Nat escaped with his life, but lost everything else. He testified before Congress, too. Named officers Egan and Clark. They were never charged. Molly Davis, the woman the police were hunting. She witnessed police starting fires, saw them pour kerosene on black homes and light the match. She ran, hid, survived, became a witness. Her testimony helped convict nobody, but it preserved the truth. And that truth is what I'm telling you today. These are real people, real names, real lives, not statistics, not footnotes in a history book. Human beings with families and dreams and futures that were stolen in 3 days of terror. Now let me tell you the context, the world they were living in. Because you need to understand what South Memphis looked like in April 1866 to understand what was stolen. April 1865. The Civil War ends. Abraham Lincoln assassinated. Andrew Johnson, a Tennessee Democrat who hated black people, becomes president. He starts dismantling Reconstruction before it even begins. Meanwhile, in Memphis, over 4,000 black residents are building a community. Most of them are newly freed. Many fled from plantations in Mississippi and Arkansas to Memphis because Union troops controlled the city. They thought they'd be safe there. They thought freedom meant safety. They were wrong. South Memphis, the area south of Gayoso Street, becomes the heart of black life. 91 black families own their homes. Own them. Property deeds, legal ownership. 4 black churches are operating. Avery Chapel, Baptist. South Memphis, Baptist. 2 Methodist churches. These aren't just buildings. They're centers of community life. Places where people gather, organize, educate their children, plan their futures. 12 black schools are running. 12. Teaching formerly enslaved children to read and write. Teaching them mathematics, history, theology. In 1 year, the black community of Memphis built 12 schools from nothing. Think about that. They had no money, no resources, no government support. They built 12 schools anyway because they knew education was the path to real freedom. Black businesses are opening. Grocery stores, barber shops, carpentry shops, seamstress shops, blacksmiths. People are working, earning, saving, investing in their futures. Property values in South Memphis are rising. Black families are accumulating wealth, real wealth, generational wealth. But there's tension, massive tension, because Memphis has a police force made up almost entirely of Irish immigrants. Poor white men competing with black men for the same jobs, dock work, construction, manual labor. And these Irish police officers cannot stand seeing black men in Union uniforms, cannot tolerate black veterans walking through Memphis with their heads held high, cannot accept the idea that black men might be equal. White Memphis leaders are furious too. Furious that black men own property. Furious that black children are learning to read. furious that black churches are full every Sunday, with people organizing, planning, dreaming of a future without white supremacy. The idea of black equality is unacceptable, intolerable. It must be crushed. And on April 30th, 1866, they get their chance. Late afternoon, the 3rd United States Colored Heavy Artillery is officially discharged. 1,200 black soldiers become civilians. They're still wearing their uniforms because they're proud. They earned those uniforms. They're walking through Memphis with their discharge papers and back pay. Some are going home to families. Some are meeting friends. Some are heading to Avery Chapel to pray. They're celebrating, laughing, free. 4 Irish police officers see them, and rage boils over. How dare these black men wear Union uniforms? How dare they walk through Memphis like they own the place? The police stop them, start yelling, demand they take off the uniforms. The veterans refuse. Words are exchanged. Tension escalates. Someone throws a punch, then another. A scuffle breaks out. Rachel Dilts, a white woman from Illinois, visiting Memphis, sees the whole thing. She'll testify later to Congress. She says the police started it. Says the officers ran after one of the black soldiers and beat him. Says the soldier fell to the ground and the police kept hitting him. The soldiers fight back. They're trained fighters. They're not going to let Irish cops beat them in the street. Shots are fired. A few police officers are wounded, none killed. A few soldiers are wounded, none killed. But the soldiers know what's coming next. They retreat to Fort Pickering for safety. That's when the lie begins. That's when recorder John C. Creighton, an Irish political leader and judge in Memphis, starts spreading the story. 2 policemen shot by Negro soldiers. It's a lie. The wounds were minor. Nobody died. But Creighton uses the lie to mobilize a mob. He reports to the police chief and county sheriff. Within an hour, 100 armed white men with torches are marching into South Memphis. By 8 p.m., the mob has grown to 200. By midnight, over 300 white men are hunting black people in the streets. Kill every nigger soldier. That's what witnesses heard them shouting. Kill them all. The mob goes door to door, breaking into homes, beating people, shooting anyone who resists, robbing families, stealing everything of value. Rachel Dilts testified that she watched the mob move through South Memphis, indiscriminately beating, shooting, robbing black residents. She said the mob didn't care if you were a soldier or a civilian, didn't care if you were a man or a woman, didn't care if you were young or old. If you were black, you were a target. And here's the most important detail, the detail that exposes the lie. The United States Army Commander George Stoneman orders all black soldiers back to Fort Pickering, orders them to turn in their weapons, orders them to stay on base. The soldiers obey, they comply. They're disarmed and confined while their families, their neighbors, their community is slaughtered. The U.S. Army had the power to stop the massacre. They chose not to. They let it happen. May 1st, 1866, day 1 of the massacre. The sun rises over South Memphis and the mob is still hunting. Memphis police and white gangs are going house to house, searching for Negro soldiers. That's their excuse, searching for weapons, legal cover for terrorism. They're breaking down doors, dragging men out of their homes, beating them in the streets. Jackson Goodall wakes up early, goes to work, comes home in the afternoon. He's tired, hungry. He stops at John Muller's grocery store to buy cornmeal, just cornmeal, food for dinner. He walks into the store and 3 white men follow him. John Muller, the grocer, watches it happen. Watches them knock Jackson on the head with a pistol. Watches Jackson fall. Watches them fire 2 shots into his back while he's on the ground. Watches them walk away, laughing. Jackson bleeds out in the streets. John Muller testifies to Congress. describes everything, names nobody because he didn't know their names. But he's clear. Jackson was murdered, unarmed, defenseless, killed for being black. The mob targets the churches next. They storm Avery Chapel Baptist Church, the church where Marcus Taylor was praying the night before. They break down the doors, drag men out of the pews, beat them with clubs, shoot them in the aisles. The floors are slick with blood. South Memphis Baptist Church, same thing. Methodist churches, same thing. Men dragged from prayer and murdered. Because the mob knows the churches are organizing centers, places where black people gather and plan and build power. The churches have to be destroyed. The people have to be terrorized. The message has to be clear. You are not free. You will never be free. This is still our world, and you will obey or die. Frances Thompson is at home when they come. White men kick down her door. She's not a soldier. She's not a threat. She's a seamstress, a woman, alone. They don't care. They rape her. Then they rape other women in her home. 5 black women raped that day, some of them minors, children. Frances survives. She'll testify before Congress later. She'll name what happened to her, describe it in detail, speak the truth that makes white congressmen uncomfortable. But she'll speak it anyway because somebody has to. Nobody is arrested for raping Frances Thompson. Nobody is charged. Nobody is punished. Lucy Smith watches her husband beg for his life, watches him on his knees with his hands up pleading with white men not to kill him. They shoot him anyway, right in front of her. Then they burn her house. She stands in the street watching everything she owns turn to ash while her husband's body lies in the dirt. She'll testify too. She'll name the men. They're never arrested. May 2nd, day 2. The mob isn't slowing down. They're escalating. Now they're not just killing people. They're burning the entire neighborhood, block by block, systematically destroying South Memphis. Memphis police are leading the attacks. Firefighters are with them. But the firefighters aren't putting out fires. They're starting them. They're refusing to fight the flames consuming black homes. One witness says firefighters told them, "We don't put out fires in Nigger Town. Let it burn." The tactic is demonic. Force families to stay inside their homes, then torch the buildings, burn them alive. Families trying to escape are shot. Children screaming in the flames, mothers throwing babies out of windows, hoping someone will catch them. Men breaking through walls trying to save their families. The smell of burning wood and burning flesh mixing in the Memphis air. 12 schools destroyed, not just closed, destroyed. Textbooks burned, desks smashed, buildings torched. The mob makes sure every single black school is gone. Because educated black people are dangerous. Black children learning to read are a threat to white supremacy. The schools have to burn. The future has to be erased. Officers Egan and Clark Memphis police are hunting Molly Davis. They go to Nat Wardland's house, kick down the door. "We're looking for Molly Davis," they say. "If we find her, we'll kill her." Nat says she's not there. They don't believe him. They torch his house anyway. Nat runs, barely escapes with his life, loses everything. Molly Davis hides, survives, becomes a witness to police terrorism. May 3rd, day 3. The final push. The mob is finishing what they started, hunting down the last resistance, burning the last buildings. By evening, the count is devastating. 46 black men, women and children dead. 75 injured, over 100 robbed. 4 churches completely burned to the ground. 12 schools destroyed. 91 homes burned. 89 black-owned. 1 owned by a white sympathizer. 1 owned by an interracial couple. The mob made sure anyone supporting black freedom paid the price. Only 2 white people died during the entire 3 days. 1 shot himself by accident. one was accidentally killed by another white man. This was not a riot. Riots have two sides fighting. This was a one-sided massacre. This was ethnic cleansing. This was genocide. And on May 4th, after 3 days of terror, after 46 people are dead, after the entire black community of South Memphis is destroyed, the United States Army finally declares martial law. Finally, after it's over, after the damage is done, after the mob has gone home, the army steps in and says, okay, enough. Too late. 3 days too late. Hundreds of black survivors flee Memphis. Families pack what little they have left and run. Run to Chicago. Run to St. Louis. Run anywhere that's not Memphis. The community is scattered, destroyed. And here's the evil part. The part that shows you this was always the plan. White authorities start arresting black survivors, charging them with rioting, charging the victims, while the white attackers, the murderers, the rapists, the arsonists, walk free. Not one white person is arrested, not one. Despite hundreds of witnesses, despite testimonies, despite evidence, 0 arrests. The property losses are catastrophic. Over $100,000 in 1866 money. That's equivalent to over $2 million today. But that's just property. That's not counting lost wages, lost businesses, lost futures, lost lives. Black veterans lose their back pay. Police robbed them on April 30th. Stole everything they earned. 3 years of military service. Gone. But here's what should have changed everything. In June 1866, the United States Congress launches an investigation. The Joint Congressional Committee on Reconstruction sends investigators to Memphis. They interview witnesses, collect testimony, document evidence, volumes of evidence. Francis Thompson testifies, describes the rape in detail, names what happened. Lucy Smith testifies, names the men who killed her husband. Molly Davis testifies, describes watching police burn homes. Nat Wardland testifies, names officers Egan and Clark. Rachel Dilts, the white woman from Illinois, testifies, confirms the police started the violence. John Moeller, the white grocer, testifies, describes watching Jackson Godell murdered for buying cornmeal. Congress hears everything, documents everything, publishes reports. The evidence is overwhelming, undeniable. This was a massacre. This was terrorism. This was organized violence with police and government participation. So what happens next? What's the result of all this evidence, all these testimonies, all this documentation? 0 prosecutions, 0 convictions, 0 compensation for victims. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Why? Because Tennessee courts refuse to hear black testimony. Under Tennessee law, black people legally cannot testify against white people in state courts. So even with witnesses, even with evidence, even with names, the state won't prosecute, and the federal government. They investigate but take no action. They have the evidence. They have the power. They choose not to act. They let Memphis go unpunished. They send a message to every white supremacist in America. You can massacre black people and get away with it. You can burn their churches, rape their women, murder their children, destroy their communities, and face 0 consequences. The message is received, and the massacres continue for the next 60 years. But the Memphis Massacre does have one impact, one hollow victory. The evidence is so shocking, the testimonies so brutal, that Northern congressmen are horrified. They use the Memphis Massacre as justification to push the 14th Amendment. Citizenship for Black Americans, equal protection under the law. The amendment is submitted to the states on June 16, 1866, just 6 weeks after the massacre. It's eventually ratified in 1868, a constitutional victory, but Memphis still unpunished. The victims still uncompensated. The families still homeless. The churches still ashes. Justice delayed is justice denied. And for Memphis, justice was denied forever. Now let me show you something that's going to change how you see American history. Let me prove to you that Memphis 1866 wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't a spontaneous explosion of violence. It was a blueprint, a template, a system test. White supremacy was checking to see how much they could destroy and get away with. The answer, everything. They could destroy everything and face zero consequences. So they repeated the pattern over and over and over for decades. Here's the pattern. Pay attention, because you're going to see it again and again. Step 1, target Black prosperity. Find a Black community that's building wealth, gaining political power, or organizing for rights. Step 2, manufacture an incident. Create a fake story about Black aggression to justify white violence. Step 3, police lead the mob. Law enforcement doesn't just allow the attack they organize, it lead it, participate in it. Step 4, destroy the community. Burn everything. Kill anyone who resists. Steal property. Erase wealth. Step 5, erase it from history. Call it a riot. Blame the victims. Remove it from textbooks. Make sure the next generation never learns what happened. Memphis 1866 perfected this pattern. And then it was copied, repeated, refined. Let me show you. 2 months after Memphis, July 30th, 1866, New Orleans, Louisiana. Black citizens and white Republicans gather at a constitutional convention to discuss voting rights for Black men. They're meeting peacefully, legally, exercising their First Amendment rights. But white supremacists can't tolerate it. Police and white mobs storm the convention hall. They open fire on unarmed people. 40 Black people killed, over 100 wounded. The convention hall is burned. Black businesses near the hall are looted and destroyed. Sound familiar? Same pattern, same tactics, same actors. Police leading the mob, federal troops refusing to intervene. And the result, zero prosecutions. The massacre is called the New Orleans riot, blamed on Black agitators, erased from history. 32 years later, November 10th, 1898, Wilmington, North Carolina, the most successful Black community in the South. Black politicians have been elected to city government. Black businesses are thriving. Black newspapers are publishing editorials demanding equal rights. White supremacists in Wilmington cannot tolerate it. They organize, plan, arm themselves. And on November 10th, they launch a coup, the only successful overthrow of an elected government in American history. White mobs storm the city. They burn the offices of the Daily Record, the Black newspaper. They hunt down Black politicians and business leaders. They murder between 60 and 300 Black residents. The exact number is unknown because they dumped bodies in the river. 1,400 Black residents flee Wilmington. The white supremacists install their own government, overthrow democracy, and it's legal. The federal government does nothing. Wilmington is called a race riot. The coup is called restoring order. History books praise the white supremacists for decades. Same pattern. Target Black political power. Destroy Black wealth. Erase the truth. September 30th, 1919. Elaine, Arkansas. Black sharecroppers are organizing a union. They're meeting in a church to demand fair payment for their cotton. White plantation owners are paying them almost nothing, keeping them in debt, trapping them in a system that's barely different from slavery. So the sharecroppers organize, meet, plan, demand their rights. The plantation owners respond with violence. They mobilize 500 armed white men. They call in federal troops, and they massacre the organizers. Between 100 and 240 black people are killed. The official count says only 5. That's a lie. Bodies are burned, dumped in rivers, buried in unmarked graves. Survivors are tortured until they confess to inciting a riot. 12 black union leaders are sentenced to death. The Supreme Court eventually overturns the convictions, but only after years of appeals. Same pattern. Attack black economic organizing. Use churches as killing grounds. Military complicity. Call it a riot. Erase the truth. May 31st, 1921, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Greenwood District, Black Wall Street, the wealthiest black community in America. Black doctors, black lawyers, black millionaires, theaters, hotels, grocery stores, banks, luxury shops. Greenwood has more millionaires per capita than Beverly Hills. It's a thriving, independent, prosperous black city within a city, and white Tulsa cannot stand it. On May 31st, a black teenager is accused of assaulting a white woman in an elevator. The accusation is almost certainly false, but it doesn't matter. It's the excuse. White mobs gather. Black veterans, many of them World War I soldiers, arm themselves to protect the teenager from lynching. Shots are fired, and then Tulsa launches total war on Greenwood. White mobs don't just attack on the ground, they use airplanes. Private planes drop firebombs on black homes and businesses. Aerial bombing of an American city. Over 300 black residents murdered. 10,000 left homeless. 35 city blocks completely destroyed. 1,256 homes burned. Every single black business erased. Property damage estimated at $32 million in today's money. And the result, 0 prosecutions. Insurance companies refuse to pay claims. The city changes fire codes so black people can't rebuild. Greenwood is erased from Oklahoma textbooks for 75 years. 3 generations grow up not knowing. Same pattern. Target black wealth. Use violence to steal property. Government participation. Call it a riot. Erase from history. Do you see it now? Do you see the pattern? Memphis 1866. New Orleans 1866. Wilmington 1898. Elaine 1919. Tulsa 1921. Rosewood 1923. And dozens more. Every single time black people built wealth, they destroyed it. Every single time black people organized politically, they massacred them. Every single time black veterans stood up, they hunted them down. This wasn't isolated violence. This was policy. This was organized terror with government backing. The system was simple. Police lead. Troops don't intervene. 0 prosecutions. Erase from history. Repeat. And they used the same playbook for 60 years until the civil rights movement forced it underground. But it didn't stop. It just changed uniforms. Now it's called gentrification. Now it's called police brutality. Now it's called stop and frisk. Now it's called urban renewal. Different words, same theft, same violence, same system. Now listen carefully, because everything you have heard so far is just the beginning. It is the crime. Next comes the cover-up, because burning churches and schools is one thing. But what really keeps you poor, what really keeps you powerless, is not just the violence itself. It is the way they erased it, twisted it, buried it, and then told you that you were the problem. The way they took physical terror and turned it into legal theft, educational erasure, and media manipulation. If you do not understand the cover-up, you will never understand why the same patterns play out in your life today. So let us pull the mask all the way off. Start with the simplest thing, ashes. When those 4 black churches in South Memphis burned in May of 1866, the flames did more than destroy wood and brick. They erased records, church ledgers, baptism certificates, marriage records, tithing books, lists of members, all gone. When the 12 black schools went up in fire, the smoke carried more than paper. It carried student rolls, attendance logs, evidence that thousands of black children were learning to read, evidence that formerly enslaved people were becoming literate at a speed that terrified white supremacy. Burned. When 91 homes turned into piles of blackened timbers, those homes took with them deeds, bills of sale, proof of ownership, receipts for land and property, personal papers that proved these families were not just renters, they were owners. If there is no record, the system can pretend it never existed. If there is no deed, the city can claim the land. If there are no books, nobody can prove that there was ever a thriving black school system. If there are no church records, nobody can prove the size and strength of the black congregation. The destruction of buildings was a physical crime. The destruction of records was a generational crime. It broke the chain of proof. It made it possible for someone in 1870 or 1880 to walk into a court and say, "My father owned that land," and for the judge to say, "Prove it." And they could not, because the proof had burned in 1866. This was not sloppy violence. It was strategic. Think about Frances Thompson again. She owned her home. She testified later that it was her property. But when they burned that house, they did not just destroy walls. They destroyed the paper trail that connected her to that land. Without paper, the law does not see you. Without records, your existence becomes a rumor, and rumor does not stand up in court. That is how a massacre in 1866 turns into a foreclosure story in 1870, and a myth of black laziness in 1900, and a wealth gap in 2025. Then there is the more obvious physical erasure, murder. Witnesses silenced forever. The men who had seen police start the fires. The deacons who saw which officers led the mobs. The business owners who knew which city officials were present. Many of them lay in unmarked graves. The best witnesses often die first in these events. The ones with the clearest memories, the ones with the sharpest tongues. And the system counts on that. Kill the storytellers, burn the records, wait one generation, then deny everything. But physical destruction was only the first layer. The next layer was law. On paper, the Civil War ended slavery. On paper, the 13th Amendment abolished it. On paper, black people were now free. But in the courts of Tennessee in 1866, a black person could not legally testify against a white person. Think about that. The system allowed a white man to walk into a black neighborhood, kill a black man in broad daylight, and then walk into a courtroom where 10 black witnesses could tell the judge what they saw. And the judge could respond by saying their testimony does not count. By law, it has no legal weight. In that kind of system, a massacre is not just possible, it is almost inevitable. Because there is no legal downside for the killers. That is what happened after Memphis. Congress collected testimony from black survivors and from a few white witnesses who were brave enough to tell the truth. People like Rachel Dilts and John Moeller. Their words are preserved. The federal reports still exist. But Tennessee courts refused to prosecute the men named in those testimonies, refused even to convene trials. Because as far as state law was concerned, the words of black witnesses were air, empty, meaningless. That is the heart of legal suppression. You create a system where the victims have no voice, and then you claim you see no injustice. Look at the pattern. Black survivors are charged with rioting. White perpetrators are never charged at all. The city pretends there was mutual combat, street fighting between two sides, even though the dead are almost all black and almost all unarmed civilians. That legal framing matters. If it is a riot, then insurance companies can write clauses that say they do not pay for riot damage. If it is a riot, then the city can claim that police acted in self-defense. If it is a riot, then the state can avoid paying compensation. A single word in a legal document can decide whether a family gets support or is left with nothing but ashes. Property law becomes a quiet weapon here. After the massacre, when the smoke cleared, the land was still there. The lots where those 91 homes had stood did not vanish. The blocks where black churches once rose were still mapped. Ownership, though, was now contested. Families that had fled in terror were branded as having abandoned their property. Their names were gone from records. Their deeds were burned. The city could step in, rezone, reassign, sell, lease, build roads through those neighborhoods, funnel investment to white parts of town, starve black areas of resources. And if any descendants ever came back 50 years later and said my grandfather owned that house, the city could respond with the same cold line. Prove it. Then there is the federal side. The government at the national level did what it often loves to do. It investigated. It wrote reports. It made statements. Then it walked away. The same country that could mobilize an entire army to crush the Confederacy could not find the will to arrest one Memphis police officer or one city official. Think about the message that sends to black people, to white supremacists, to future generations. Now move to the third layer, the classroom, the textbook, the silence. Ask yourself this: when did you first hear about the Memphis Massacre of 1866? Not the phrase Reconstruction violence, not some vague mention of post-war conflict. The actual event, the dates, the numbers, the names. For most people, the answer is never, or maybe very recently. Maybe you stumbled across an article online. Maybe your church did a program on forgotten history, but you did not learn it in middle school. You did not see it in a slick high school textbook with colorful pictures and timelines. You did not watch a documentary about it in a standard American history class. That is not an accident. That is policy. That is curriculum design. When state boards of education decide what goes into textbooks, they make choices. Do we include Memphis 1866? Do we give it a paragraph, a page? Do we call it a massacre? Do we call it a riot? Most of the time, for most of the last 150 years, the answer has been silence, or distortion, or both. Language is a weapon here. Riot, massacre. Two words that describe very different realities. Riot suggests chaos, two sides fighting, spontaneous violence. Massacre suggests one side slaughtering another, deliberate killing, immoral judgment. For more than a century, official accounts often used the word riot for what happened in Memphis, for Wilmington, for Tulsa, for Elaine. Riot became code for black people somehow being responsible for their own deaths, for white backlash being understandable, for insurance companies to deny claims, for cities to avoid taking responsibility. When you look at old newspapers from Memphis, you see headlines about Negro uprisings being suppressed. You see editorials praising the police for restoring order. You see very little about the 46 black bodies. Very little about churches burned. Very little about schools turned to ash. Those stories are buried on inside pages or not printed at all. That is media manipulation. Tell half the story. Tell it upside down. Keep repeating it until it hardens into common sense. And it works. By the mid-20th century, even many black residents of Memphis did not know the full story. They knew there had been some trouble, some kind of riot during Reconstruction. Maybe they had heard whispers in the black church, an old deacon mentioning how the city once burned. But there were no markers, no memorials, no city-wide days of remembrance, no required history units. People drove down streets built on top of burned black neighborhoods and had no idea what lay beneath their tires. It took until the 21st century for serious public discussion to begin. for universities in Memphis to host conferences, for museums to build exhibits, for the word massacre to be used consistently. That gap is not a simple oversight. It is a strategy. Because if your children do not know that their great-great-grandmother survived a massacre, they will think poverty is their fault. They will think renting instead of owning is a moral failure. They will think the wealth gap is about personal responsibility instead of organized theft. This is why you can have generations of people saying slavery was a long time ago. Get over it, without ever realizing that massacres happened not in 1860, but in 1921 in the case of Tulsa, or that redlining went on until 1968. The middle chapters are missing. The story jumps from slavery to Martin Luther King. Everything in between becomes a blur. That blur is where the real theft happened. The last layer of the cover-up sits in the stories this country tells about law and order, about police, about crime. When you grow up hearing that police exist to protect and serve, but you never learn that police once led mobs that burned black churches, your picture of reality is incomplete. When you hear the phrase race riot and you imagine two equal groups fighting in the streets, but the actual numbers say 46 dead on one side and 2 accidental deaths on the other, your moral compass gets twisted. The lies are not just about events, they are about what those events mean now. Why does this matter to you sitting here watching a video in the 21st century? Why should you care about what happened in Memphis in 1866 when you are worried about paying bills, avoiding police stops, keeping your kids safe, dealing with a broken healthcare system, and trying to build some kind of financial cushion? Here is why. Look at the numbers. Today in the United States, the typical white household has about $188,000 in wealth. Add up the value of the home, the retirement accounts, the savings, the investments, and that is the median. The middle point. For black households, that number is about 24,000. That is an 8-to-1 gap, 8 times. For every dollar in wealth, a black family has a white family has 8. That is not income. That is wealth, net worth. The cushion between you and disaster. The resources you can pass to your children. People love to tell a story about that gap. A story that blames black culture, black spending habits, black fatherhood, black choices. They say black people do not save. They say black people do not invest. They say black people buy shoes instead of stocks. You have heard every stereotype. Maybe you even believed some of them. But stop and do the math. In 1866, in Memphis alone, over $100,000 worth of black property was destroyed in 3 days. That number includes homes, churches, schools, businesses. In today's money, without even counting compound interest, that alone would be worth over $2 million. Now add Tulsa, where insurance companies refused to pay claims on 1,256 burned homes and dozens of businesses. Add Wilmington, where black professionals were driven out and their property seized. Add Elaine, add Rosewood, add all the smaller pogroms that never made national headlines. Then, layer on redlining. Federal housing policy from the 1930s to the 1960s that literally drew red lines around black neighborhoods on maps and denied those areas mortgages and loans. That meant black families could not get the low-interest home loans that white families used to buy houses in the suburbs. Those houses then became the foundation of white wealth, paid off over 30 years, passed on to children. Meanwhile, black families were trapped in rented apartments in neighborhoods starved of investment, paying month after month, but owning nothing. Add urban renewal, the building of highways through black neighborhoods in the 1950s and 1960s. Entire communities bulldozed in the name of progress. Businesses wiped out, churches relocated, homes condemned. Compensation when it came was often pennies on the dollar. Families scattered again. Generational roots pulled up like weeds. Add mass incarceration, starting in the 1970s and exploding in the 1980s and 1990s. Black men imprisoned at 3, 4, 5 times the rate of white men for the same offenses. Felony records that make it hard to get jobs, hard to rent apartments, hard to vote. That is not just a moral wound, it is an economic one. It removes wage earners from households. It takes fathers away from children. It drains money into fines and fees. It slows or stops wealth building. When you stack all that, are you really going to say the wealth gap exists because black people do not budget well? Or are you willing to face the truth? That wealth was stolen, systematically, over generations, with law, with fire, with bullets, with pens at bank desks, with red lines on maps, with bulldozers, with prison uniforms. Think back to Francis Thompson's house in Memphis, to Jackson Godell's body on the sidewalk outside that grocery store, to the 91 families who watched their homes burn. If those properties had not been destroyed, if those families had been able to hold on to those homes, pass them down, borrow against their equity for their children's education, start businesses using that property as collateral, where would their descendants be today? Homeowners, landlords, business owners, people with something to fall back on. Instead, you get a great-great-grandchild working 2 jobs, renting an apartment, wondering why it feels like they are running in place. This is what people mean when they say reparations. They are not talking about charity. They are talking about repayment, restitution. In the Bible, when someone steals an ox or a sheep, they are required to pay back 5 times, 7 times. That is divine math. That is God's law. They stole homes, land, businesses, churches, schools, lives. They stole labor for centuries. They stole the profits that came from that labor. They stole the chance for those profits to compound over time. What is owed is not a handout, it is a bill. Some people say slavery was long ago. Let it go. But Memphis was 1866, Tulsa was 1921. Redlining continued legally until 1968. That is not ancient history. That is your grandparents, your parents. You probably know someone who was denied a home loan in a white neighborhood in the 1970s or 1980s. You probably know someone who was steered away from certain areas by real estate agents. Someone whose parents were told this neighborhood is not for you. That is how a massacre in 1866 reaches out its hand and touches a mortgage decision in 1980. That is how a burning church in Memphis becomes a low credit score in Chicago. Now look at policing. In 1866, Memphis police led mobs into black neighborhoods. They burned houses. They shot unarmed black men. They raped black women. They were not a few bad apples. They were the system. They were the law in action. No accountability, no oversight, protected by courts, sanitized by newspapers. The story told to the public was simple. The police restored order. They kept the city safe. They put down a Negro uprising. Today, when you see video of police kneeling on a man's neck for 9 minutes, when you see body camera footage of an unarmed black woman shot in her own home, when you read about a traffic stop that ends in a funeral, you are not seeing something new. You are seeing an old script with modern props, different uniforms, different weapons, same idea. Black resistance equals threat. Black assertiveness equals danger. Black freedom equals chaos. And chaos must be controlled. When you hear the phrase, "Blue Lives Matter," think about those blue uniforms in Memphis in 1866. Think about officers Egan and Clark lighting fires. Think about police dragging black men out of their homes. If the police uniform is sacred, then what do we do with that history? If law and order is the highest value, then whose law and whose order are we protecting? Then there is gentrification. Modern land theft in business casual clothes. In many cities, you can watch the same pattern play out in slow motion. A black neighborhood that has been starved of investment for decades suddenly becomes attractive to developers. Coffee shops open, art galleries appear, property values rise, property taxes go up, rents increase. Long-time residents, many of them black, cannot afford the new costs. They sell, they move, or they get evicted. Their old homes are renovated, flipped, sold to newcomers with higher incomes. The narrative says the neighborhood is improving. The reality is that the people who suffered through the hard years are pushed out right when the benefits arrive. Compare that to Memphis. In 1866, they did not raise taxes. They raised torches. But the outcome is similar. Black families lose land, lose homes, lose claim to space. White interests step in and profit. The tools change. The result stays the same. Mass incarceration functions in a similar way to those old arrests after the massacre. In 1866, black survivors are charged with rioting. Their presence in jail serves a purpose. It flips the narrative. It allows the city to say, look, the troublemakers are in custody. Order has been restored. Today, black men are imprisoned for nonviolent drug offenses at staggering rates compared to white men who commit the same crimes. Their criminal records then justify treating them as second-class citizens. Employers see charges and turn them away. Landlords deny applications. Voters' rolls are purged. Once again, the victim becomes the problem. The crime becomes the excuse for more control. This is why history matters. It is not about memorizing dates for a test. It is about seeing the line from 1866 to now. If you do not know that line exists, you will spend your whole life thinking your struggles are individual, personal, private. You will feel shame about things that were done to you, to your family, to your people. And shame keeps you quiet. Shame keeps you from demanding what is owed. At this point, you might be feeling a lot. Anger, sadness, shock. Maybe a deep sense of recognition, like puzzle pieces clicking into place in your mind. If this truth is hitting you in your chest right now, do something simple but important. Pause and breathe, then lean in. And right here, before we go even deeper into who you are in all this, there is something you need to do, not for algorithms, but for the mission. If this truth hit you, if you learned something today that you never heard in school, take a second and comment the word truth below. One word. Truth. Because every time that word shows up, it is a small act of defiance against 150 years of silence. If you are done with the lies, hit that like button. Not just as a habit, but as a statement. As a way of saying, I see what they did, and I refuse to pretend it did not happen. And share this with someone who needs to wake up. A cousin who still thinks they are broke because they made bad choices. A church member who never heard about Memphis. A friend who keeps saying the past is the past. Send it. Because truth spreads person to person the same way lies do. But truth heals. All right? You know the crime. You see the pattern. You understand the cover-up. Now we need to talk about you. About who you are in this story. Because this cannot just be a history lesson. This has to be an identity revelation. If you stop at anger, the system still wins. If you stop at grief, the system still wins. You need to come out of this with a different understanding of yourself, your family, your mission. Hear this clearly. You are not the descendant of victims. You are the descendant of survivors, of soldiers, of builders, of millionaires whose accounts were erased, of kings and queens whose crowns were stolen, but whose bloodlines survived anyway. You are not poor because your people were lazy. You are poor because your people were robbed. Repeatedly, viciously, systematically. Once you accept that the shame has to go, all that is left is anger, pride, and purpose. Think again about those 4,000 black residents in Memphis in 1866. About those 91 homeowners in South Memphis. In 1 year after emancipation, those families went from nothing to property owners. That is not failure. That is genius. That is hustle. That is sacred determination. Think about 12 schools built in a year. Today, with grants and philanthropists and government programs, people struggle to open one school in a decade. These folks built 12 in 12 months, with almost nothing, while facing daily harassment. That is not some struggling community of broken people. That is an empire being born. Now imagine if Memphis had not burned. Imagine if those churches had been allowed to keep growing. Imagine if those schools had continued teaching. Imagine if those 91 families had been allowed to keep their homes. Imagine second and third generations inheriting paid-off houses. Imagine grandchildren going to college with money drawn from home equity. Imagine businesses started with savings that were not stolen. Imagine what downtown Memphis might look like today if black ownership had never been broken. The point is not to live in fantasy. The point is to understand the scale of what was taken. The point is to feel deep in your bones that your great-great-grandparents were building something huge, and you are their unfinished work, not some random accident. That is why when you walk into a black church today and hear the choir sing, you are hearing more than a Sunday tradition. You are hearing the survival of institutions that white mobs have been trying to burn down since 1866 and before. When you hear an older relative talk about sharecropping, about moving north, about starting over in a new city, you're listening to someone whose life was shaped by these massacres, even if they never used that word. When you see a black veteran in uniform today, know that he or she stands in a long line that stretches back past Iraq and Vietnam and Korea and World War II, all the way back to Fort Pickering, to the 3rd United States Colored Heavy Artillery, to men who wore the Union blue in Memphis and paid for it with their lives. So when someone tells you to get over it, when someone says stop living in the past, smile sadly if you have to, then know this. You are not living in the past. The past is living in you, in your DNA, in your neighborhood, in your paycheck, in your church, in your sense of what is possible. The only question is whether you will carry that past as a chain or as a sword. You were preserved through all of this for a reason. Your ancestors did not survive the Middle Passage slavery, Memphis Tulsa, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration, so you could spend your life in confusion about who you are. They did not pray in burning churches, so their descendants could live without memory. God did not keep your line alive through all this, just so you could exist. Survival is not the end of the story, it is the beginning.